Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Minted Podcast. On today's episode, I'm excited because I love sports, and sports is actually kind of what first got me into the NFT space. And today, we're going to talk a lot about the intersection of sports and athletes as content creators, and what does the intersection of that and NFTs and Web3 have to do with it. So to have this conversation, to lead us through all of this, I'm super excited to have Andrew Petcash, the founder and CEO of Profluence, here on the show. Andrew, how's it going today?
Seth, appreciate you having me on. Excited to dive into this ever-evolving, constantly changing space today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super stoked to talk about it. Both big basketball fans. You got a Boston University jersey behind you. What years did you play for BU?
So I played from 2017 to 2021, and just quick fact that always somehow comes up, so I'll just get it out of the way before 2020. We made the NCAA tournament, got canceled because of COVID. So that was the peak 2020 of my career, and also the lowest of my career. And then it's kind of over after that point.
Yeah, that sucks, man. I still can't believe that March Madness got canceled.
The one year I made it, the last goal from the childhood.
Where were you guys, where do you think you would have ended up seed wise?
Probably 14 or 15. So okay. You never know. We could have been that Loyola Chicago Cinderella team. Yeah. You never know, but
totally.
But it was probably going to be played in. Yeah, it was probably going to be played in like Cleveland, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, so it would have been pretty close. Had a ton of family and friends like ready to go, and it was just like, nope, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That would have been awesome to be able to have that experience. So I want to talk about sports and NFTs, and I kind of want to share some of my story with you because the first time it clicked with me of NFTs was I'm one of the many that NBA Top Shot was our on-ramp. And I remember the first time of and I don't know the specific numbers, but where I could understand the value of if there's this LeBron James dunk highlight and there's only 1,000 of them, I can understand the value of there only being 1,000, and I can understand why the price is going up. And then I remember okay, I'm going to try this out, get in NBA Top Shot, got in my first, this was January or February of 2021. So I got in, was all right, I'll try and get one of these drops. I got one, got some Zion moment, sold it the next day for $300. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So then I just used that money, kept buying more of the moments. And for me, it was more just looking at it and just seeing how is this market moving. And that was really what whet my appetite to where then a couple months later, as a podcast agency owner, I was like, well, dang, what does this mean for podcasters? What does this mean for content creators? And I've always been really intrigued by the intersection of sports and NFTs. I'm curious, with your background as a D1 college athlete, when did the interest in NFTs and Web3 start for you? And kind of how did that journey begin for you?
Yeah. So when I graduated, that was a little bit after Top Shot. So I wasn't in it as early as you, but when it really clicked for me was when Constitution DAO, basically we're trying to buy the U.S. Constitution. They had the people. Right. I still own the whatever. I think there's tokens associated with it, and they're still actually worth a pretty decent amount. I put $100 in. I think it's still worth 500. At one point, it was 4,000. So it's a crazy return. That's cool. But then I started to go, this is really interesting. Anybody, so random people can have access to this really cool, basically private investment. And so then it kind of launched, then Link Style launched, and they started doing it in golf. Hey, we want to buy a golf course. Then Crowhouse tried to buy an NBA team. And I was like, okay, this is still really early. And I know both Links and Crows, they've had some problems because they're learning. They're the first mover. But I think there's they've learned a lot. And I know some of the people at both, they're going to move in the right, they're starting to move in the right direction. And I think it's kind of just setting the roadmap. And I know roadmap's often used in this space, so maybe that's not the right word here, but it's setting basically the floor for everyone else now to come in and put real utility and real value and give access to everyone. View it as like the people's team, right? And that's when I started to go, oh, the DAOs, they make a lot of sense. That's when I started to get real into the space, and NFTs basically fuel them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. And some of the projects you mentioned, like it's been fun to see them, but yeah, they're the first movers of trying to do what they're trying to do. Give us some background, like once you graduated, kind of to now, like what do you have your hands in, and tell us a little bit about Profluence and what it is that you're doing.
For sure. Yeah. So name, image, and likeness was the first year after I graduated. So I wasn't able to make any money as a college athlete. Now I did behind the scenes. I built like a recruiting thing while I was in college. So technically illegal, but I did it anyway. My name wasn't really associated with it, but I started to see, okay, this shift, we have like NFTs. So we have new technology, Web3 in general. And we also have athletes able to monetize at a younger age than ever before. So I was like, this is only going to grow the sports space. It's only going to enhance the value of athletes and sports as a whole, because the more athletes, more value they have, the more value everything has in the sports world. And so I was like, I want to create some sort of media, personal brand around it, because I love sports and I love business and also the futuristic type tech. And I was like, I can get on the ground floor of it. I can start covering it, doing cool stories around it, using athletes to tell the stories, and then eventually get to the longer term plan of, launching my own things or investing in my own things. And it's been a fun journey. So Profluence basically centers around the business of athletes and the business of sports, the media portion, and then there's a few other verticals currently being built out to add more value to the sports startup space, and then the major people involved, whether you're an executive, operator, investor, or anyone in sports. So I'm trying to basically create that platform, and that's Profluence.
Love it. And I mean, you're doing a great job. The brand is awesome, and the work that you're doing is amazing. Where do you see NFTs and Web3 like really intersecting with, I would say, like, let's first kind of dive into the NIL, like the name, image, and likeness. Like, do you see these worlds really converging? And are there even examples of what you've seen of some people that are already doing it?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I wrote an article about this maybe a couple months ago, but the article is all about NFTs and NIL colliding, because the two worlds are two new worlds. And there's companies that they're not just trying to build an NIL company. They're not just trying to build an NFT company, which are both brand new ever. They're trying to build an NFT/NIL company. And there's a handful of them. So it's like really cool to see them in two completely new areas, try to combine the two. One is more development, one's a technology, and put them together. And so we're seeing a lot. It's mostly started as marketplaces, but now it's like, okay, how many NFT marketplaces can we really have? And we saw a bunch of the big time athletes go and sell and do cool. But now we're starting to see more of the utility and the real players come about, which I'm sure you've focused on and talked to people about in the space. But one of the cool ones is the Players Lounge. So they're using the NFTs to help players and like a team as a whole get more money, do cool things in the community. And they're using it almost as, I don't want to say a loophole, but a little bit of a loophole of how to get guys paid, like a salary type contract through the NFTs, and go around the NCAA's rules where you're technically only allowed to make money off endorsements, not a contract or a salary, but they're kind of, so this maybe isn't like the best, ethical use case of NFTs, but in reality, the athletes should get paid. So to me, it's a bad law anyway. It's like, okay, for example, the Big Ten just signed an $8 billion deal with a bunch of media networks, and the players aren't going to touch any of that. They're not entitled to any of that. So now we have to use like NFTs and NIL and all these loopholes to get them money. It's kind of crazy, but that's a story for another time. There are a bunch of cool things being used in the space, and college is a great test to the market, like market adoption, put their MVP out in college sports.
Yeah. Yeah. When you have your ear to the ground, like what are you hearing as far as like some things people are wanting to try or different things, whether it's these words should probably never come out of my mouth, but like whether it's ethical or not, like what are the ideas that you're hearing athletes talk about and athletes think about when it comes to Web3 and NFT?
Yeah, the one thing, so athletes, first off, they want to figure out ways to get paid for their work that they're doing already as an athlete. And that's the problem with college sports. They're saying, okay, yeah, now you're allowing us to make money from endorsements, but we still have to go do shoot commercials, or we still have to post things on social media. It's still extra work. We're still trading time for money. But all of our time spent on the field or in the weight room or in the classroom, we're not getting paid for that. So that's where it kind of comes into the media. So they're trying to figure out ways essentially to use NFTs, use collectives, even use DAOs. We're seeing that at some schools launching it for fans to put in money and alumni and boosters. And then it's like that DAO now pays out money to players, a piece of it, because you can separate things. And then it also, maybe 20% goes to events, 50% goes to athlete salaries, and 30% goes to, just operations. So that stuff is fascinating to me because it's just this combination of two brand new worlds, and there's unlimited possibilities. And I always try to be an optimist and see how it can work. And a lot of people are trying to say how it won't work, but I'm like, there's something here. It's only a matter of time before the dots connect.
Right. Well, and that's super interesting because like in the podcast space, I was telling you before this, like we'll mint an NFT for this episode, and the smart contract with that will have you and I's address in there. And so anybody that buys that, it'll be split, like the revenue will be split. And that will be the case whenever somebody buys the NFT for this episode. It's right now, there's not much utility behind it. It's a way for them to support us. It's a way for our audience to say like, man, this episode was great. And Andrew, I believe in what you're doing, and I want to say thank you for it. So I think that's really interesting, but I think down the road, like the technology is not quite there yet, or I haven't seen anybody doing it. But I think a couple years down the road, any revenue that's ever associated with this episode could then go through that smart contract. And then you're potentially getting reciprocal revenue for whatever this episode creates. And I think it's really interesting to think about that from an athlete's perspective, like you're saying, where maybe there's a smart contract for a college basketball team, and the revenue that college basketball team generates, it's being distributed in whatever proportions the powers that be deem fit to those players. And I think it's interesting because I think it hasn't been really possible to do it to like the technology is what makes these things possible. So I think that's where like some of the things you're saying, it's like, well, man, that would be amazing. Like to have, a college student body that's buying NFTs to show their support, and then the players getting that. I think that's really, really interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And most of that is happening at Michigan. It's called Michigan DAO or Michigan Go DAO, or it has some unique, funky name. But it makes perfect sense to me and a lot of other people, but it's convincing athletic departments and the NCAA and all this old school thinking that they can't even wrap their heads around. They're still trying to figure out their own cell phones. So like a lot of things, I think it's only a matter of time. All the people that grew up with video games, that they're still playing video games when they're older, so it's only going to increase the chance of their kids, and you just see how things take time. So this technology, and we both know Carlos, who's building Uncut. I mean, he's built in Web 1 and Web 2, and he said he's seeing the same stuff. There's real utility here. There's big power players coming back to build things, and what's cool for me, there's a lot of money and talented people being put towards sports companies, but also they're equally like trying to build things in Web 3, and sports is this great entryway now because athletes, everyone wants the attention of them. They just want to be involved with them. So that's been like a big focus of even the stuff I do is, okay, what's going on here? Why this technology, why this athlete, why this trend idea, what is it? And college sports, the utility is endless. And I'm even thinking, I know you're doing it with the podcast, and that makes sense. We got the colleges trying to do it. I'm even thinking about it for my audience from a writing perspective of, okay, if you join this tier, you get access to this, and any sponsorship money is 20% allocated to the audience. And people want to make, they want to make money with who they watch now. I watch, for example, Joe Rogan podcast all the time. It's like, but YouTube or Spotify is getting all that money, and Joe, of course, is doing fine. But it's like, what if now every time the show does better, I'm entitled to a piece of that, or there's an event associated with it. I think it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. It's just, we need to, the kinks need to be worked out, and they're in the process of doing that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think in a lot of these industries, especially sports, like the people that are controlling the industry and the people that are controlling these departments have probably grown to be comfortable with the way things work being what is in reality not sustainable. Like, I don't know if I'd go as far. Maybe I will. I mean, maybe it is exploitive. You were the college athlete that was working for your university for 4 years and not getting paid.
It's very exploit. Yeah, I had a conversation this morning about this on a different podcast, and it was all around the ethics and like sports, and it was like they were basically trying to say, do you think it is in a way, or it used to be in a way, like slavery? And I said, I think that's a very strong word. I think we shouldn't go that far. But at the same time, it's your full-time thing, and you're not getting paid for it. And you're bringing that school, entity, organization, whatever, a lot of money in return for literally, oh, here's your free education. But it's like, I couldn't even go to class half the time. I couldn't even do all this. And it's a lot. And it's a lot on these athletes. So it's good to see them. And it's the whole adage, right? The money's not going to solve everything or make you happy. So just like thinking, oh, we're going to give athletes more money, there's still going to be problems. But I think these technologies can at least help us in other ways think about, okay, let's take care of the people. There's no athletes, there's no sports. Let's take care of them a little better. And it starts the younger you are. It shouldn't just be about, you have to get to the NBA. Only 5,000 players have ever played in the NBA, have ever stepped on the court and played in a game. 5,000. That's so few in history. Like I made it to college, which was a 1% chance to play D1. I had like a 0.001% chance to play in the NBA, like basically nothing, even though I was right there. I was one step below it. It's so hard. And it's like, you're not going to allow me to make money until I get to the NBA. So it's just pushing it younger. And now you build the entrepreneur spirit. And now that college kid that, let's just say, makes even $50,000 from NIL because of NFTs or the DAO or whatever, maybe now he uses that money and he goes and starts a company training athletes or helping them. And then that one kid from that training goes on to build the next great technology. Like, there's a greater impact here that I'm excited to see play out.
Yeah, I think that's a really good perspective, and like that just puts it in light of like the importance of it in this space. And, you know, part of the reason I think NIL took so long is it's just freaking complicated. Like, and I think even now with it coming out, like, how does Boston University, how can they put a dollar sign on like how much money you should earn that they've earned from you? And I think it's just been complicated, and it requires contracts and it requires law firms to like figure all that stuff out. And I think with cryptocurrency and smart contracts and NFTs, there's still a lot of work to go, but don't you think it like simplifies that and makes it easier for revenue share and for people to be able to get paid?
Yeah, I think one of the main things is transparency all around it, because then we're going to be able to see very clearly, and all parties can see, here's how much revenue came in. Here's what was spent on this. Here's what everyone's entitled to. Here's the contracts, right? You can literally see them. It's just out in the open. It's not, hey, let's pay this kid in paper cash, $100,000 and leave it in a backpack in his room. It's like, no, like you just do it through a smart contract. Everyone knows, and it helps. And I know we've been focusing a lot on college, but there's even more utility for pro athletes, because a lot of them, and I know they do really well, and people are like, they don't need any more. But that's false. There's the top portion, the top 10% do really well. But even you look at a sport like boxing, and I'm just checking on my facts here, but only 22% of boxers make over $10,000 a year. So only 22%. So, and then it's only 4% make over $200,000 a year, professional boxers. So basically there's this tiny percentage at the top, and then everyone else gets screwed. So if you're not Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, and I know Conor's not a boxer, but anyway, I mean, there's no other ways to monetize. And like, these are other avenues where now they have that chance and they're not totally relying on their sport, which I think is a really, really positive net outcome.
Not asking you to name any names, but is that $100,000 in cash in a backpack in somebody's room? Is that a real thing you've heard of?
Oh, that's 100% a real thing. Yeah, I've had and people can talk about it now. A kid that he graduated. Actually, so when I came in, he used to come back in the summers and play at BU, and he had just graduated from BU, but he was thinking of leaving after his junior year, and he was telling us, and I believe him. He has no reason, but schools were offering him, like big schools, Power 5 schools, $50,000, $75,000. Like, you'll come play here, we'll pay you this. But he viewed his education and getting the BU degree as more than that. He's like, I need at least more than BU's. I don't know. It's like 70. It's something crazy. But he was like, I need at least that much. And it's like, they're like, but you're getting that for free, so it's not really worth that much. But it was just crazy to me that he was even gonna, like, they were gonna pay him that much because he was just an okay player. So the big time guys, 100%. Like, you think Ben Simmons went to LSU just cause he didn't go to Duke or Kentucky? No. Like, where there's smoke, there's fire.
This is the point in the conversation where I'll potentially ruin our relationship by saying that I'm a Duke fan. But
no, I'm a Duke fan as well, so we're good. We're good.
I remember when I was like 10, my brother was a North Carolina fan. I was like, all right, I'm going to like North Carolina. He's like, no, you can't. That's my team. I was like, fine, I'll like Duke. But I always joke that Coach K would never do anything like that. But at the same time, you just know it's integrated into probably all of these.
He might not do it, but
places.
someone else is doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody else
on the Duke staff. Yeah, he just doesn't know about it. Hey, Coach K, I really want this kid. Okay, just don't tell me what you did to get him.
Yeah, plausible deniability.
Yep.
And I think you said it well. Like, it's the transparency. And I think across, not just in sports, but across culture, like, we all need more transparency. Like, I think people are fed up with no transparency in the financial industry. I think athletes are fed up with no transparency in the athletic space. And so I think the idea of having that transparency and being able to follow where money goes, I think it's scary for the people that are in control and the people that have power. I think there's a lot of CEOs that are like, no, I don't want that transparency because right now I can make, $2 million a year while my lowest employees are making 40 grand and nobody needs to know that. And I think there's going to be some growing pains, but I think that transparency is definitely the right move.
Yeah, and I think it goes two lanes. I don't mean to be like the dystopian, bad future either. I think we got to be careful too not to head towards like a social credit score system or anything like that as well, like too much over the top everything. But in terms of points of athletics, especially, I mean, I saw this one of it was an HBCU school. And anyway, one of the former players, coaches, he was a player and a coach, older guy, but he launched a nonprofit to help kids get a scholarship to go play at these HBCUs. And he raised a bunch of money for it. It looked like they're doing all this good stuff. But then when you look at the operations, he was paying his daughter basically $500,000 a year. And then like $50,000 a year was going towards actually like one scholarship. And it was like, this is the stuff. It took forever. It took many years for that to come out. But it's like, come on, that should never happen. Like, if you have some transparency of people donating their hard-earned money because they think they're going to help some kid get a scholarship, and then you're going to go just pay your daughter. Like, it's like those scummy things that I think this hopefully like puts more of an end to. But there's, like anything, it's a balance. Over the top, and then we're like China and they're checking everything. That would be bad too.
Yeah. And I think that the principle behind it is like, if I create value for somebody else, then I should get value. Like, there should be a value for value exchange. Obviously sales industries like are built off of commissions, and there's, tons of people that do really well because they're incentivized. They're like, well, yeah, I'm going to go and create value for this company because I know I'm going to get, 1, 2, 5, 10% of what I bring in. And they do really well when they have that. And so I think this is opening up the door to where in athletics. It could be like, hey, great team. Like if you guys do really well this year, if you win more games, our team makes more money. And guess what? Some of that's coming back to you. Like that is healthy. It's healthy for humans. It's motivating for humans, and the transparency behind it is healthy. So it's like, it's going to be really fun to see what comes of it in these next few years.
Yeah, I have a few points on that. Number one is they always say, like, if you want something done, check in more. So if you have, say we both own our own things, you have people doing stuff, it's like check in more if you want things done, because it's like the transparency. And it's the same reason why, and I actually tested this out in a study, and this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I think it's relevant. So I think virtual assistants are a great way to do operations. You take care of people in a different country. They do great work, and it's more data entry, etc. When I tested it out, I had this one girl, she was great, and I had her doing data tasks all around athlete money, stuff like that. But at first she was on a time tracker, and I was so now I knew how long it took her to do things. And then I said, okay, I trust you. Let's get off of it. But I know how much she's going to get done. Just I've seen it way down in production, way less, trying to say, and I was just like, no, that's not how it works. And I really just did it as a study, and it just kind of goes to your point of, if you're motivated, if there's transparency, you're going to get things done. And it's the same. It's like, how can March Madness, for example, NCAA March Madness, they make $1 billion, the NCAA, from March Madness, $1 billion. The players, here's, a nice little gear bag. Yeah, you get on TV. Mm-hmm. Maybe you grow your social media. Maybe now you get an endorsement.
Some beats.
Yeah, you get one of their sponsors hooks you up. But it's like, if you go to the Final Four, you're getting $0. Get out of here. Even if you create incentives around that, if your team makes the Final Four, every player gets $50,000, which is literally nothing for the NCAA. They should be doing that. But it's also like, now you get better games and more viewers and more intensity and all that. So yeah, I think incentives, and you can use Web3 technologies for the transparency around it. It's golden, and it makes so much sense. And I really believe it's only a matter of time, but we'll see how, the leaders and people in power, how long they take, or how long it takes for them to shift out, and people with our mindsets to get in.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you build your business in sports, you're building everything that you're doing right now around the sport of business. Where are the intersections for you? Like, where are you thinking, whether it's projects you're thinking of launching, or if some people you're working with are working on projects, like where do you actually see Web3 and NFTs intersecting specifically with the work you're doing?
Yeah, and I've been very cautious not to, I call it, there's like the main mission and then there's side missions, very much like a video game. And, you can play the main mission, but there's side things, you can go do them. So a few of my side missions per se have been in the Web3 space. And one of the areas I've been trying to do some cool stuff in, and it's all in development currently, but is in pickleball. Pickleball is growing like crazy. There's all these people super interested. Everyone, whether it's your grandma or, a young kid, they realize there's money to be made here. And it's a fun game. We all love playing. We see all these pro athletes buying teams, but Mark Cuban actually bought a team today. It's like,
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. But it's like, how do we just, so Tom Brady, because he's Tom Brady, he just gets to come in and buy a team. Like, that's not fair. Just, you know what I'm saying? So now there's just this kind of notion of like, the people should have some ability in saying it. We're the ones actually watching tournaments. We're the ones actually playing. We're the ones actually growing the game. So is there an easier way with a less money contribution to either grow up the amateur space, to buy a team, blah, 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 blah. I think there's just interesting things in growing sports and growing spaces. And that's why I think NIL has been interesting as well, because it was a new growing space and you're trying to integrate new tech into it. So instead of just integrating new tech, you're almost doubling up and integrating a new idea into a new space, new development. And those are two places for sure.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. And it seems like I've talked with several people in your position where you're running and building businesses that it's inevitable. The intersection is inevitable, but there's caution. And I even like hear it in you, like you're learning about it, you're watching it, but there's some level of like caution and really wanting to observe and make sure that like when you do make a move that it's the right one. Explain that caution to me. Explain like why you're not just like, all right, I'm going to launch something tomorrow.
It's a great question. So one of my cautions is there's still this very much, and then everyone say, oh, it's decentralized. But a lot of these technologies, companies, they feel still very centralized, and they're almost in this Web 2.5 space. And I get it. We're going to need these intermediaries to bring us in. But one of my things is I would love to go and do a bunch of Web3 stuff with my audience and readers. I mean, there's so many, some of my readers I've brought, they've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into companies that I've referred them to. And I'm like, it's not to say I want any money out of that, but it's to say, hey, there's a bigger play here where I can have someone, I can bring you these opportunities. You got to own this NFT. Where do I get my cut in it? Mm-hmm. And I hate to, sound like that, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like I'm offering immense value to both sides. And I'm just kind of like
for value thing.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting. But what my thing has also been, and if the company or whatever I build on or whoever I use for smart contracts, NFTs, whatever, if they go extinct, in 3 years, they're gone, shut their doors. Well, then do I lose everything because I was on their platform and now it's like I have to go transfer everything over? You're going to open a Google account or you're going to use Notion or these, because they're not going anywhere. So I've just been like, I don't know which company or whoever's building what is still going to be around because there's so many. I want to make sure I still want to get in early, but I also want to make sure, and this is why I like Carlos. I mean, with Uncut, he's basically building a little bit to like, hey, if Uncut went under, we would still be able to use your smart contract and move it over. So that's why I'm getting really closer. It's a 2023 thing for me. Hey, get on this. But I just got to make sure I can offer enough utility. That's the other thing. You can launch something, but is it going to look any different than a paywall subscription on reading? Mm-hmm. If it's not, then you're not ready. You need to be able to offer more.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Because even as the conversation is shifting more towards utility, which is a good thing, it should be like we need to be talking about utility with NFTs. I personally don't really care about an NFT that doesn't have utility behind it. But a lot of people are saying like, okay, cool, you'll just get this, it's not any different from a paywall or any different. And so I think like you're saying, like you really need to think through the utility. And the thing that's exciting to me is it's like, Patreon is great and you could have 1 million patrons and that's awesome. I think the exciting thing is the scarcity. Like what happens to your community when you apply scarcity? And what we've seen happen is as a community goes deeper, it actually gets wider. Like as a community, as the leader of a community, as you go deeper with a select group of people, your community is actually going to get bigger because it's going to create that exclusivity and that scarcity. People want access to athletes. So how do you see this playing out where like, NBA players or NFL players can all of a sudden offer some like scarcity to their fans where there's actual engagement and how is that going to impact the space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of, and goes back to my other part. It's a great idea and it makes so much sense. The problem is, honestly, because it's such a good idea and everyone knows it would work and makes sense, there's so many people trying to build it. So these athletes now go, like, I heard this from someone else and I heard this from a different company and it sounds all the same. So they don't even know who to go with. So now they're second guessing. They're not just picking one. Their business partners are going, we can get more money up front from this one. And it's just causing all this mess and just inaction because there's so much action going on. It's actually causing inaction from who they're trying to target, which is the athletes. But also because everyone sees the value in athletes, it's moving beyond just Web3. So now people are trying to launch companies around giving them investments, bringing them more endorsement deals. So athletes right now, they don't have a team around them. And I'm talking more professional athletes here. If you don't have a team around you, it's almost impossible to get anything done because you're just pulled in so many directions and you're still expected, obviously, to perform. So now you're like, where do I put my time? Do I make sure I'm still getting my work in and hopefully salaries and contracts? Do I spend a little more time off the court to make sure I can make up more money there? So some, they've even themselves just inaction. The ones that have teams around them, very good, because now they have people. And I know a lot of these people, they'll call themselves like business partners of athletes, but they're, some of them are just kind of agents, but wrapped up a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
They're vetting the opportunities, and they're saying to the athletes, hey, I talked to 20 companies in this space. I think this is the best one. And they're just trusting them. So there's also this whole new avenue where I think, and I'm going to write about eventually, I think the agency model is going to change, and Web3 is going to have a huge impact on it, because now there's going to be transparency between that. And now it's not just the current agent model or representation model is athlete signs a new contract or signs an endorsement deal, 5 to 20%, whatever their contract goes to the agent. But now athletes are going, I don't want to give that up. I want equity too in companies. But the agents are going, no, you can't do that. You shouldn't invest in that company. The reason being is there's no money involved for the agent, because it's just equity. But now we're seeing this business partner come up, and they're going, okay, the equity is the smarter move for some. Let's see if we can get some endorsement money. We got to do a little both. But now they're trying to figure out how to monetize. So they're also, that's where it's perfect for even just the business partner to athlete relationship to have Web3 technology around it for transparency. Like, hey, I got you. I helped you invest in these 3 companies early, and they all had 10x returns. I brought you those. You're not getting those without me. Where's my thing? So I think it's solving the middleman problem for a lot of industries as well. And the middlemen are fighting back. And that's the problem, why it's taking a little longer to adopt, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's so many industries that have been run by all of these middlemen. And it has mostly been to the benefit of the middlemen and their bosses, but it's been to the detriment of the people below them. So I think it's slowing things down, but it's, again, the transparency is really changing things. As we kind of bring this to a close, what have been some of the projects? There have been some projects, Tom Brady, Jimmy Butler. There's been projects that athletes have done that have been pretty awesome. What have been some of the ones that have stuck out to you that you're like, yeah, this was a well-executed Web3 project by an athlete?
Yeah. And I'm going to pull it back one layer. I'm going to first talk about a project I think was really bad. Because I think we got to see both sides. So the first one that was really bad was De'Aaron Fox. He's a point guard for the Sacramento Kings. He launched Swipa the Fox, which was this NFT collection. It raised like 1.5 million. Supposed to do autographs, all this cool stuff, ton of utility. It was early on. And he tried to do a lot of it himself. He didn't have time, didn't know how to run the Discord, all that stuff. Pulled the rug, disappeared, shut down, and just screwed, basically everyone out. And so it was a bad look, not only on him, but everyone else. On the flip side, like you said, there's a bunch of good ones. And one I'm really excited about, and it's actually bigger than just one small thing, is Spencer Dinwiddie, who's an NBA player as well. He's launching this Web3 infused like creator economy company called Galaxy. So Galaxy, but with the C, Galaxy. And it's all around all these different, you can create a DAO, you can sell NFTs, you can do all this. And it hasn't released yet, but he raised $30 million for it. So it was number one, really cool just to see an athlete while he's still playing raise money for a company that he is like pretty actively involved with. And it's all around not only helping him launch products, but other athletes, creators, musicians, entertainers, blah, 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 blah. So I'm excited for that. And it hasn't had success yet other than a fundraise, which I think that was the weird thing of like 2020, 2021 is everyone was so excited when people raise money, but it's like, why don't we get more excited when companies actually make money and do really good things? Not when they just raise money from some investor and sell some crazy idea. So I'm hoping, and I think he'll build a lot of cool utility and he'll bring athletes into the space through. And then we'll see, like you mentioned, we'll see a lot of cool ones because of that platform he built.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a fun one to watch and see. And I think that's the exciting thing about this space is like for content creators, for athletes, we're all talking about it. Like everybody knows there's intersection. And I think in the next 12 months, there's going to be more people that fail and more people that succeed. And so it's just such a fresh time of really seeing what ideas are going to last and then what ideas are going to be able to become models for what other content creators, what other athletes can do. I really appreciate your time. Where can our audience stay in touch with the work that you're doing? What's the best way to stay in touch with
For sure.
The work you're up to?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Seth. It was awesome, and everyone for listening. I appreciate you as well. But you can check me out on all the social medias at Andrew Petcash. So that's Andrew and then Pet and Cash put together. And then profluence.com is my website. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to talk to everyone. I'm still in the what they call the yes phase, where I say yes to everything. I'll talk to everyone as I build and try to offer as much value to everyone. Yeah, it was awesome, and appreciate you having me on, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you. To the listeners, we will link to Profluence in the show notes, so make sure to go and check it out. And yeah, best of luck to you as you build your business. And it's going to be fun to have more conversations in the future as some of these intersections begin to happen and as some of these ideas come to fruition. So thanks again for your time, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Seth.